Hey guys, in this video we're going to be identifying the parts of a parabola. We're going to be looking at the y-intercept, the zeros, the vertex, and the axis of symmetry. Starting with the y-intercept, a y-intercept is defined as where a graph crosses or intersects the y-axis. If we look at this graph here, I'm going to highlight our y-axis in blue. And we can see that the graph crosses the y-axis at the point -3. Now when we write our answer, we don't want to just write -3. We have to write our answer as an ordered pair. The first coordinate in an ordered pair is the x-coordinate, and the second coordinate is the y-coordinate. Because this point lies on the y-axis, after all, it is the y-intercept, the -3 is going to go after the comma. The first number, because it's on the axis, is going to have to be 0. So my y-intercept is 0, -3. The next thing we'll be looking at are our zeros. Zeros are like a fancy way of saying x-intercepts. So similar to the y-intercept, that's just where the graph crosses the x-axis. If you look at the graph here, I'm going to highlight my x-axis in yellow. And you can see that this parabola, this graph, intersects the x-axis twice. It crosses at -3 and it crosses again at +1. So my first zero, going from left to right, is going to be -3, 0. Again, this point is on the x-axis, so the numerical value goes in the x-coordinate position. The y-coordinate would be 0. The other answer, that one crosses at +1, making my answer 1, 0. Now moving on to the vertex. The vertex is defined as the highest or lowest point on a parabola. If we're dealing with the highest point, we call that a maximum. I would draw that looking like a mountain with a little point on top. If we're dealing with the lowest point, I like to call that a bowl of cereal with one last piece of cereal in the very bottom, and we call that a minimum. So again, the mountain, that's the maximum. You've reached the highest point, the maximum altitude, you could say, of the mountain. And if you're dealing with a bowl, something that looks like a bowl, we call that a minimum. And you've reached the minimum level of cereal in that bowl. You have one piece left. In the graph we have here, this looks like a bowl. So we're going to say that this is a minimum. And that purple point right there represents the vertex, the x-coordinate of which is -1 and the y-coordinate of which is -4, making my vertex -1, -4. Lastly, we're going to move on to the axis of symmetry, and that is very closely related to the vertex because the axis of symmetry, when dealing with parabolas, always pass through the vertex. It's basically an imaginary line that goes through the vertex and cuts the parabola into two equal halves that are symmetrical. If you were to fold the paper over on itself, it would be the exact same on both sides. Now looking at our graph, we can see that the axis of symmetry is this green dotted line here. I'm going to highlight that in green. But we want to write that answer as an equation. We need an equal sign in the middle. So first thing you want to ask yourself is, what number does that line cross on your x-axis? And based on this example, it looks like it's crossing -1. That means our axis of symmetry is equal to -1. But what equals -1? X equals -1. Our axis of symmetry is x equals -1 because, as you know, when you graph things that are in this format, it gives you a vertical line such as what we see here. A little shortcut that I like to tell myself is look at the word axis, just the word axis, and it contains an x in it. So that's how I remember that it's supposed to be x equals -1. Because if you're dealing with a multiple choice test, a lot of times they're going to throw in y equals -1 as an answer to try and distract you from what the real answer is. So there we have it. We just identified the y-intercept, zeros, vertex, and the axis of symmetry of a parabola from a graph. Hope you enjoyed the video.